Hello students, myself Chandrasekhar Raju, Zoology faculty. Today I am here for the power-packed final phase revision of the chapter Breathing and Exchange of Gases. In this session, we will consolidate the core concepts of this topic, clarify the tricky areas, and will make the chapter exam ready. So when we get into the weightage of this chapter in NEET, average number of questions in NEET per year that are coming from this chapter are 2. And if you see the blueprint, that means the weightage of the topics related to this chapter in the last 10 years, like 2013 to 2025, the topics like respiratory organs, we got 3 questions, and events of respiration 1, mechanism of breathing, we got 13 questions, because this is the hotspot of this topic. From this topic, there is a chance of getting 1 question per year. Next, exchange of gases 2 questions, transport of gases 7, regulation of respiration 4, and disorders of respiratory system 8. This disorders of respiratory system is also a very small topic, but still we got 8 questions in the last 10 years, and this is also the topic which is having the more chances of getting questions in NEET. So let's get into the topic, this topic wise only. The first the topic is respiratory organs. Before getting into the respiratory organs, let me give you the introductory points. See, our body utilizes the oxygen for indirectly breakdown of simple molecules like glucose, fatty acids and amino acids to derive energy. In this process, carbon dioxide is released, which is harmful to the body. For that purpose, we need continuous intake of oxygen and continuous output of carbon dioxide. This exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between body and atmosphere is said to be respiration. See, this is the broad idea regarding the respiratory organs as per our NEET NCERT syllabus. The lower animals like sponges, coelentrates and flatworms, they respire through body surface. When it comes to the annelids like earthworm respire through moist cuticle. But when it comes to the arthropoda, the insects respire through trachea, aquatic arthropods respire through gills. Mollusks, fishes also respire through the gills. And when it comes to amphibians respires through gills, skin and also through the lungs. The respiration that is performed through the skin is said to be the cutaneous method. Respiration performed with the help of lungs is said to be the pulmonary method. When it comes to reptiles, aves and mammals, irrespective of the habitat, they respire only through the lungs. This is the broad idea regarding the respiratory organs. When it comes to the human respiratory system, see, in the human respiratory system, the respiratory system starts with a pair of external nostrils. Nostrils opens into nasal passage opens into nasal chambers. The nasal chambers opens into the pharynx. A portion of the pharynx is the common passage for food and air. That portion is generally said to be the oropharynx and laryngopharynx. And the pharynx opens into the larynx. At the junction, there is an opening called glottis. Glottis is covered by a lid made up of cartilage known as epiglottis. Epiglottis closes the glottis at the time of swallowing of the food. Regarding the larynx, larynx is the voice box which is made up of cartilage. It is involved in the production of sound. Then larynx continues as a trachea. So trachea is said to be the windpipe. It passes through the neck, gets into the mid-thoracic line. Exactly in the middle of the thoracic, at 5th thoracic vertebra, it is divided into primary bronchi. Each primary bronchus enters the lungs. See, this is the trachea. Trachea divides into primary bronchi. Each primary bronchus enters the lungs. Inside the lungs, primary bronchi divides to secondary bronchi. Secondary bronchi divides into tertiary bronchi. Then this tertiary bronchi further divided into smaller branches called bronchioles. If you see the list of bronchioles that are dividing inside the lungs, see, this is see, larynx opens into trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, primary bronchiole, secondary bronchiole, tertiary bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, and further divides into respiratory bronchiole, alveolar ducts, and finally opens into alveoli. So this is the total respiratory system flow chart. In this flow chart of respiratory system, starting from the external nostrils till terminal bronchioles, it is said to be the conducting part. The last 3 parts like respiratory bronchioles, alveolar ducts and alveoli put together known as a respiratory or exchange part. And the conducting part functions are different and exchange part functions are different. The conducting part is mainly involved in transportation of the gas through the respiratory passage. It clears the dust particles from the air and also humidifies the air. When it comes to the respiratory or exchange part, it is the primary site for the exchange of gases between alveoli and blood. So regarding the lungs, humans consist of a pair of lungs, right and left lung. They are protected by a double membrane bound pleura. Between the two pleura, there is a fluid called pleural fluid. Pleural fluid prevents the friction. Next, outer pleura, it lines the thoracic cavity. Inner pleura is in contact with the alveolar membrane. One more important point related to the respiratory system is the thoracic chamber is a airtight chamber. It has borders, like see, for the front side of the thoracic chamber, we can call it as ventral side, there is a sternum. Dorsally we have thoracic vertebrae, laterally we have ribs, and posteriorly we have diaphragm. These are the borders of the thoracic chamber. In this airtight chamber, the lungs are situated. We cannot alter the lung volume directly, but we can able to alter the volume by changing the volume of thoracic cavity. So any change that occurs in the thoracic cavity will be reflected in the lungs. So these are the important points related to the respiratory system. When it comes to the events of respiration, so the respiration basically consists of 5 events. The first one is called ventilation. Ventilation is nothing but exchange of gases between atmosphere and lungs. The second step is external respiration, which is nothing but the diffusion of gases between alveoli and blood. The third is the transportation of gases. The fourth is the internal respiration. Internal respiration is also nothing but the exchange of gases, but between blood and tissues. Once the internal respiration is over, then whatever the oxygen that entered into the cells, it performs a particular process called cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, oxygen is involved in the breakdown of glucose into carbon dioxide and water. Finally, in that catabolic process, the energy is derived. So the cellular respiration is a catabolic process. In the cellular respiration, there is a generation of energy in the form of ATP. So this is regarding events of respiration. The next topic is mechanism of breathing. The mechanism of breathing involves 2 steps, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration, during which atmospheric air is drawn into the body, and expiration by which the alveolar air is released out. So in this process, actually the pressure gradient plays an important role. See this point, the movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. So this pressure gradient plays an important role in inspiration and expiration. If you see the inspiration and expiration in the form of charts, to give you the clarity with the help of NCERT lines, see this is the flow chart related to the inspiration. The inspiration is initiated by the contraction of the diaphragm. So when diaphragm contracts, it increases the volume of the thoracic cavity in anterior-posterior axis. We can also call it as vertical axis. So in this process, the dome-shaped diaphragms becomes flat, followed by the contraction of external intercostal muscles. When external intercostal muscles undergo contraction, it increases the volume of the thoracic cavity in dorsoventral axis. So overall, when thoracic volume increases, the pulmonary volume also increases. When pulmonary volume increases, there is decrease in intrapulmonary pressure. So decrease with respect to the atmospheric pressure. So decrease of intrapulmonary pressure inside the lungs compared to the atmospheric pressure. So as there is less pressure inside the lungs compared to the atmosphere, always as the gases moves from higher pressure to the lower pressure, the atmospheric air will be drawn into the lungs by a process called inspiration. So inspiration, you can call it as active process because it involves the contraction of muscles. When it comes to the flow chart of expiration, see, expiration is opposite to the inspiration, which is caused by the relaxation of the muscles. See, the diaphragm muscles undergo relaxation. When diaphragm muscles undergo relaxation, it decreases the volume of thoracic cavity, same in anterior-posterior or vertical axis, followed by the relaxation of external intercostal muscles. When external intercostal muscles undergo relaxation, whatever the ribs that are move upward and forward during the contraction, now they will come back to their original position and decreases the thoracic volume in dorsoventral axis. So the decrease in thoracic volume decreases the pulmonary volume. When pulmonary volume decreases, that causes increase in the intrapulmonary pressure slightly when compared to the atmospheric pressure. So, in numbers, if you want to say atmospheric pressure is generally 760 mm of Hg, it increases slightly to 762. As there is increase in the intrapulmonary pressure, now gases moves from higher pressure to lower pressure. So, the gases start moving from lungs to the atmosphere by a process called expiration. So, these are the flow charts related to the inspiration and expiration. A healthy human can able to breathe 12 to 16 times per minute. The average breathing number per minute is 12 to 16 times. And one more important point is, we have the ability to increase the strength of the inspiration and expiration. But for that we need to use some additional muscles. Those additional muscles includes the muscles of abdominal wall. By using the muscles of abdominal wall, we can able to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration. And the volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer. So, these volumes, of course, we can also calculate the capacities by using this. The volumes and capacities are useful clinically. They are helping in assessment of different pulmonary functions and also pulmonary disorders. So, this is regarding the mechanism of breathing inspiration and expiration. So, in this mechanism itself, we have to talk about the volumes and capacities, respiratory volumes and capacities. Regarding the volumes and capacities, the first volume I am going to discuss is tidal volume, TV. Tidal volume is the volume of air inspired or expired by quiet breathing, normal breathing. It averages around 500 ml. So, each time we can able to take 500 ml in, 500 ml out by quiet breathing, that is said to be the tidal volume. When you calculate the tidal volume per minute, that is around 6000 to 8000 ml, nothing but 500 into 12, 500 into 16, it is around 6000 to 8000 ml per minute. Next one is inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume, which is nothing but IRV, this is the volume a person can inspire by forcible inspiration. It averages around 2500 to 3000 ml. Followed by the expiratory reserve volume. It is the volume expired forcibly by forcible expiration by a person. It averages around 1000 to 1100 ml. The next volume is a residual volume. Residual volume, it is a volume of air remaining in the lungs even after forcible expiration. So, after performing ERV, that means sending the air by force out, still if any air remains in the lungs, that is said to be residual volume. It averages around 1100 ml to 1200 ml. And by adding few respiratory volumes described above, we can able to derive respiratory capacities. Let's talk about the respiratory capacities now. The first respiratory capacity is the inspiratory capacity. You can call it in abbreviated form as IC. Inspiratory capacity, it is the total volume of air inspired after normal expiration. It involves TV followed by IRV. So, IC is equal to TV plus IRV. The next one is expiratory capacity. It is the total volume of air expired by a person after normal inspiration. It includes TV plus ERV. So, EC is equal to TV plus ERV. The third capacity is functional residual capacity. See, don't get confused with the residual volume with the functional residual capacity. Residual volume is the volume of air remaining in the lung even after forced expiration. But functional residual capacity is the volume of air remaining in the lung only after normal expiration, only after sending a tidal volume out without sending ERV out. If you consider that ERV which is there inside along with the RV, that will be calculated as functional residual capacity. FRC is equal to ERV plus RV. The next one is vital capacity. So, vital is nothing but maximum capacity. See, there is a breathe in vital capacity and a breathe out vital capacity. If you talk about the breathe in vital capacity, it is the maximum volume of air inspired after forcible expiration. Generally, by normal breathing, we don't perform the forcible expiration. We will not send ERV out. But after sending ERV out, when you perform the maximum inspiration, that maximum inspiration is called inspiratory capacity. Maximum inspiration is called vital capacity. So, it includes what? So, whatever the ERV you have sent, you need to take it in, followed by TV, followed by IRV. So, VC is equal to TV plus IRV plus ERV. This is breathe in. When we talk about the breathe out vital capacity, it is the maximum volume of air expired after forcible inspiration. So, forcible inspiration means we are taking TV followed by IRV. After taking IRV, if we perform the maximum expiration, that is called vital capacity. For performing that maximum expiration, first we need to send whatever the IRV we have taken into outside, followed by TV, followed by ERV. Again, breathe out vital capacity also includes TV plus ERV plus IRV. The next one is total lung capacity. Total lung capacity is the volume, total volume of air accommodated in the lungs by the end of a forcible inspiration. So, by the end of a forcible inspiration. So, it includes what? So, what we can able to accommodate by the end of forcible inspiration in our lungs. So, generally, normally our lungs will have RV and ERV, but when you perform the forcible inspiration, we will take TV followed by IRV. So, that means it includes TV plus IRV plus ERV plus RV. So, this is said to be the total lung capacity. The next topic is exchange of gases. Alveoli are the primary sites of exchange of gases, but exchange of gases can also occur between blood and tissues. The oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged in these sites by simple diffusion, mainly based on pressure gradient. So, especially the pressure gradient refers to the partial pressure. And what is partial pressure? It is the pressure exerted by an individual gas in a mixture. That is said to be the partial pressure, and partial pressures of different gases will be mentioned in the next coming table or column. And along with the partial pressure, the other two important factors that influences the exchange of gases are one is solubility of gases, second one is the thickness of the respiratory membrane. So, here as a word respiratory membrane is there, I just want to tell you what is exactly the respiratory membrane is. So, regarding the respiratory membrane, see this picture I want to explain. See, this is the alveolus and these are the blood capillaries that are surrounding the alveoli. The respiratory membrane includes the simple squamous epithelium lining the alveolar wall plus basement membrane and then the endothelium, nothing but the simple squamous epithelium of blood capillary. So, all these three components put together forming a respiratory membrane. The thickness of the respiratory membrane is much less, it is less than a millimeter. And through this respiratory membrane, there will be exchange of gases between the alveoli and blood can occur. And this exchange of gases between blood and alveoli is said to be the pulmonary exchange, and exchange of gases between blood and tissues is said to be systemic exchange. So, when it comes to the exchange of gases and partial pressures, see this picture. The partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air is 104 mm of Hg and the carbon dioxide is 40 mm of Hg. See, when it comes to the partial pressures of oxygen related to the pulmonary vein, which is oxy blood, it is around 95 mm, and systemic arteries is also oxy blood around 95 mm of Hg. And in the tissues, the partial pressure of oxygen is 40, and the deoxygenated blood, that means systemic veins and pulmonary arteries, the partial pressure of oxygen is again the 40 mm of Hg. Let us talk about the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So, in the alveoli, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40 mm of Hg. In oxy blood, that is in pulmonary vein and systemic arteries, it is again the 40 mm of Hg. In tissues, 45 mm of Hg. And in the deoxygenated blood is also the 45 mm of Hg, like systemic veins and pulmonary arteries, they consist of deoxygenated blood. They shows the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is around 45 mm of Hg. So, now let us talk about the pulmonary exchange and systemic exchange. At the pulmonary exchange, as the partial pressure of oxygen is more in the alveoli, it will be diffused into the blood capillaries. As the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is more in the blood capillaries, that means pulmonary capillaries, if it is diffused into the alveoli. So, this exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between alveoli and pulmonary capillaries is said to be pulmonary exchange. When it comes to the systemic exchange, as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high at the tissues around 45 mm of Hg, the CO2 from tissues will get into the systemic capillaries. Oxygen partial pressure in the systemic capillaries around 95 mm of Hg, but in the tissues it is 40 mm of Hg. So, the oxygen start moving from systemic capillaries into the tissues. This is said to be systemic gases exchange. So, the factor solubility I want to concentrate here. The solubility of carbon dioxide is nearly 20 to 25 times higher than that of oxygen. So, that the amount of carbon dioxide that can diffuse through the diffusion membrane per unit difference in partial pressure is much higher compared to that of oxygen. So, carbon dioxide is diffused more when compared to the oxygen. So, this is regarding exchange of gases. And one more point is these partial pressures regarding the alveoli, regarding the tissues, oxybled, deoxygenated blood with respect to the oxygen and carbon dioxide is very much important. I want you to remember all these values. So, with this I have completed the topic exchange of gases. The next topic is transport of gases. See, the oxygen transportation can occur from alveoli to tissues, carbon dioxide transportation from tissues to the alveoli. First, let us talk about transportation of oxygen. See, the oxygen is entering from alveolar air into the blood of pulmonary capillaries. Once the oxygen enter, the oxygen is mainly transported in two forms. One is a dissolved state by the plasma. Second one is oxyhemoglobin state by the hemoglobin of erythrocyte, that means a red blood cell. So, around 3% of the oxygen will be dissolved in plasma and transported from alveoli to the tissues. When it comes to the oxyhemoglobin, the oxygen gets into the RBC. In the RBC, oxygen reacts with the hemoglobin and forms oxyhemoglobin. It is a reversible reaction. This reaction can occur at the pulmonary capillaries. That means at the pulmonary capillaries, that means at the alveolar site, oxyhemoglobin is formed. So, what are the conditions that are required for the formation of oxyhemoglobin? So, these conditions are very much important. Remember, the first condition is partial pressure of oxygen. So, the high partial pressure of oxygen is the primary factor that is involved or that influences the formation of oxyhemoglobin. Along with this partial pressure of oxygen, the other factors also that can influence the formation of oxyhemoglobin, they include partial pressure of carbon dioxide, that is low partial pressure, low temperature, and also the hydrogen ion concentration, that is low hydrogen ion concentration. In this oxyhemoglobin formation, when the oxyhemoglobin is formed, see, one molecule of hemoglobin can carry maximum of 4 molecules of oxygen. So, Hb reacts with 4O2 and forms HbO2 taken 4. So, that is the reversible reaction. So, this oxyhemoglobin which is formed at the site of alveoli transported through the blood to the site of tissues. After coming to the tissues, as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very high at the tissues, now the oxyhemoglobin will start dissociating. So, this is called dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. So, what are the factors that are influencing the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin? One of the factors, important factors, is partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So, the high partial pressure of carbon dioxide at the tissues causes the dissociation. And the second important factor is partial pressure of oxygen. The low partial pressure of oxygen is also one of the important factors that can influence this dissociation. Along with these two factors, the high temperature and high hydrogen ion concentration will also influence the dissociation of oxyhemoglobin. Once the oxygen is dissociated from the hemoglobin, that will be delivered to the tissues. On an average, 100 ml of oxygenated blood can deliver 5 ml of oxygen to tissues under normal physiological conditions. But at the time of a strenuous exercise, the amount of oxygen delivered to the tissues will increase. Here, there is a diagram related to the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Let me give you the basic concepts related to this. This is the standard graph that is explaining the relation between partial pressure of oxygen to the percentage of hemoglobin that is saturated. So, according to the standard graph, when the partial pressure of oxygen in the oxygenated blood, when it is around 95 mm of Hg, it can able to saturate nearly 97% of hemoglobin. But in the deoxygenated blood, the partial pressure of oxygen is around 40 mm of Hg. The 40 mm of Hg can able to saturate nearly 75% of the hemoglobin. Next, there is a word called P50 value. P50 value is nothing but the partial pressure of oxygen required to saturate 50% of the hemoglobin. It is around 26.7 mm of Hg of oxygen. So, this is the standard oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. See, for this oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, there is a right shift and there is a left shift. When the graph shifts to the right, that is called a Bohr shift, that indicates increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, decrease in the saturation of hemoglobin with the oxygen. When there is a left shift, that is called a Halden shift, that indicates increase in the partial pressure of oxygen, so that the saturation of hemoglobin with the oxygen increases. It will shift to the left side. It is around 98% of hemoglobin will be saturated at the Halden shift. The next topic after the transport of oxygen is transport of carbon dioxide. See, transport of carbon dioxide, I just want to explain it on a flow chart. See, transport of gases by blood, oxygen 3% dissolved in plasma and around 97% as oxyhemoglobin by RBC. But when it comes to the carbon dioxide, 7% of the carbon dioxide will be transported in dissolved state by plasma. So, in this 7%, see the CO2 reacts with the H2O present in the plasma. In a reversible reaction, it forms the carbonic acid. This carbonic acid is formed at the systemic capillaries. It will go to the pulmonary capillaries. There, it will be dissociated to H2O and CO2 will be sent out through the alveoli. Next, around 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is transported by hemoglobin in the form of a carbaminohemoglobin. Again, this carbaminohemoglobin formation is also a reversible reaction. Carbaminohemoglobin formation occurs at the tissue site and it will be dissociated to carbon dioxide and hemoglobin at the alveolar site and CO2 will be sent out. Major percentage of carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonates and it is transported by both RBC and plasma. It is around 70%. When it comes to the bicarbonate form of or mode of transport of carbon dioxide, I will explain it in the form of a reaction which is there in NCERT. See this. This is the 70%, around 70% of the carbon dioxide at the tissue site. This will get into the RBC, reacts with the water present in the RBC with the help of an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase and forms carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid in the presence of same enzyme called carbonic anhydrase will be dissociated into HCO3 minus and H plus. This is hydrogen ion and this one is the bicarbonate ions. So, this is a forward reaction. This forward reaction like CO2 plus H2O giving rise to H2CO3 dissociated to HCO3 minus and H plus. This forward reaction occurs at the tissue site with the help of an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Now, this the blood will flow to the alveolar site. After getting into the alveolar site, the reaction will be reversed, backward reaction can occur. At the alveolar site, the H plus reacts with the bicarbonate ions and form H2CO3. H2CO3 will be dissociated to CO2 and H2O and this CO2 from pulmonary capillaries will go to the alveoli. From alveoli by expiration it will be sent out. This is the backward reaction. Even for the backward reaction also the enzyme required is carbonic anhydrase. This carbonic anhydrase enzyme is present in RBC. Of course, it is also present in the plasma, but the carbonic anhydrase present in the RBC is more concentrated compared to the plasma. Next, so this is regarding the transport of carbon dioxide and 100 ml of deoxygenated blood after moving towards the pulmonary capillaries can deliver around 4 ml of carbon dioxide to outside. See, 100 ml of oxygenated blood deliver 5 ml of oxygen to tissues, 100 ml of deoxygenated blood can deliver 4 ml of carbon dioxide to the alveoli. So, this is regarding transport of gases. Again, I just want to summarize the percentages. The percentage of oxygen transported in dissolved state is 3% by plasma. In oxyhemoglobin state is 97% by the RBC. When it comes to the carbon dioxide, 7% of the carbon dioxide is transported in dissolved state by plasma. 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is transported by the RBC. That means with the help of hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin in carbaminohemoglobin. Next 70% is the major percentage of carbon dioxide transported as bicarbonate both by RBC and plasma. So, this is regarding the transport of gases. The next topic is regulation of respiration. Human beings have a significant ability to maintain and moderate the respiratory rhythm to suit to the demands of the body tissues. This is done by the neural system. So, regarding the centers of neural system that are regulating the respiratory rhythm, the first one is the medullary rhythmic center, which is also called respiratory rhythmic center. The respiratory rhythmic center is present in the medulla oblongata and it is the main center which is primarily responsible for the regulation of both inspiration and expiration. The next center is pneumotaxic center. It is located in the pons region And there are two important functions mentioned regarding the pneumotaxic center with respect to this NEET syllabus. One is pneumotaxic center can moderate the functions of respiratory rhythmic center. Of course, the neural signals from this center can reduce the duration of the inspiration. When duration of the inspiration is reduced, then the rate of respiration increases. So, pneumotaxic center can reduce the duration of inspiration and increases the rate of respiration. So, after respiratory rhythmic center and pneumotaxic center, some areas that are sensitive to certain chemicals can also regulate the respiratory rhythm. That one is a chemosensitive area. Chemosensitive area is located adjacent to the respiratory rhythmic center in the medulla oblongata, and it is highly sensitive to the components like carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions. When CO2 and hydrogen ion concentration increases in the blood, this center get activate. After activation, the chemosensitive center can pass on the information to the respiratory rhythmic center, asking the respiratory rhythmic center to take appropriate steps to cut down the CO2 and hydrogen ion concentration in the blood. Next, some receptors present in the blood vessels also can able to regulate the respiratory rhythm. The receptors present in the aortic arch, the receptors present in the carotid arteries, they are also sensitive to CO2 plus H plus. And whenever the concentration of CO2 and H plus increases in the blood carried by the aortic arch and carotid arteries, with the help of receptors present in the wall, they can detect and they can also pass on the information to the respiratory rhythmic center. So, when respiratory rhythmic center gets a signal regarding the high concentrated CO2 and H plus, center will start taking steps to reduce their levels in the blood. Overall, regarding the significance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the regulation of breathing, this point is very, very important. The role of oxygen in the regulation of respiratory rhythm is quite insignificant. Then whose role is quite significant? CO2 role is quite significant. So, this is regarding the regulation of respiration. The last topic is disorders of respiratory system. I already told you this is a small topic, but this topic has got some importance related to the NEET, more possibility of getting questions in the NEET on this topic also. The first disorder related to the respiratory system is asthma. Asthma is difficult in breathing, causing wheezing due to inflammation of bronchi and bronchioles. And asthma is a type of allergic reaction. This inflammation is caused due to the release of histamine by the mast cells. And the second disorder is emphysema. It is a chronic disorder. What happens in this disorder? The alveolar walls are damaged. But when alveolar walls are damaged, the respiratory surface decreases. When respiratory surface decreases, the exchange of gases will be affected, and that causes breathing issues. And the main cause or major cause for emphysema is the cigarette smoking. Next, respiratory disorders are occupational respiratory disorders. See, in certain industries, especially those involving grinding and stone breaking, so much dust is produced so that our defense mechanism of the body cannot fully cope up with the dust. So, what the dust can cause? It can cause the inflammation and also fibrosis. Fibrosis is nothing but proliferation of fibrous tissues. So, because of this, finally, the lung damage may occur. So, occupational disorders, the dust coming from the different industries can damage the lungs through inflammation and fibrosis. And workers who are working in these industries, they need to use the protective masks. Some of the examples for the occupational disorders, they are also asked in previous NEET, like silicosis, siderosis, bicyanosis, asbestosis, etc. are the important examples of occupational disorders. So, with this, I have completed the whole chapter, the breathing and exchange of gases. Thank you.